So it's like kind of like, what can I put this kid on a pedestal just to knock him off? You know what I mean? Like that was kind of like where it was. I was like, all right, I'm gonna put him do that Batman thing where he's born with a silver spoon, top of his game, you know, early on, and then like, you know, everything gets taken away from him.
We've got a special guest on the show. I already posted on Facebook, and I'm going to be doing a lot of advertising when we get this up and running. I love cons, and one of the things that I loved about cons is seeing new artists and seeing new things. But the guy that's on our show today here, Rob, we met last year, right? Was it last year, the first con? We walked past your booth, and I'm like, holy crap, wait, stop.
Something like this caught my eye. Yes, I did your Kickstarter.
I'm walking by and I'm like, wait a second, NightWolf, where did I see NightWolf? And I'm like, wait, did he make comics based on a video game? I'm like, then we just started that conversation. It's like, it went upwards from there. And it's like, Jessica kept bugging about the hardback comic that she's got over there that she wanted for so long.
It's well worth it. I devoured it. I'm gonna go back and reread it.
Just be careful if you actually put your fingers on the things, because if you put your fingers in the insides, black ink comes off. It's like they're marking us, you know. But first of all, thank you for being on the show. Thank you for coming to the Warrior Roundtable, because we want to showcase the best of fantasy. We want to showcase the best of the artists and just showcase geekiness and everything that we are, and everything that you are, and everything that people like you are that come on the show and want to, you know, share their message and share their wisdom and just share about themselves. So let's start with something simple. What got you into wanting to do, well, NightWolf, for example? What got you into wanting to write comics?
So this kind of goes back to like when I was a kid learning to read. I have dyslexia and attention deficit disorder. So for my mom to kind of trick me to try harder, and to kind of give me a little help with the reading side of things, she gave me these comics starting off with like cassette tapes. They were like the Batman Untold Tales. They had cassette tapes and they had actors talking through the word bubbles. So it kind of started down like, okay, now I can kind of follow along a little bit, start to recognize the words. That led to then me wanting to read more comics and having the smaller word bubbles versus like larger text chunks and like paragraphs helped me decipher words better in context with the pictures. So that was kind of like a thing. And as long as my grades were up and I was good, she would get me 3 comics a week. Fast forward that to junior high. You know, I always kind of like got that feeling of like I wanted to do something epic whenever I played a video game or watched a movie, you know, got inspired to be creative and do something. I want to do something like that. I want to, you know, so, you know, in comics, it always, you know, have been collecting for years, and that was kind of like, okay, I could possibly do this. So that's kind of like where I started doing fan fiction for X-Men. I did like a story, like this was after Wolverine lost his adamantium, but before he got it back. And I was like very gung-ho, like I'm going to write a story on how this happens, right? So I sent it into Marvel, and I got a very kind rejection letter telling me that, you know, their storylines are so far in advance and that, you know, this wouldn't fit in with what their plans were, but they encouraged me to keep it up. So that was me kind of like lighting the fire under my ass to you know, the 13-year-old, you know, getting that kind of a letter, just kept doing it. So I kind of took a lot of the characters that I made my own X-Men team, like a spinoff team, kind of similar to like New Mutants or Gen X. So I kind of like took those characters and started like making my own universe, my own world. And NightWolf, the character that turns into NightWolf, or at least kind of like evolved into him, came out of that original story and just kind of started running with it and kept going through, you know, it took a lot of years to finally get to where I was ready to like finally put it out. But that's basically the start of it.
Okay.
I figure SnowPaw kind of came in there too, or did she come like after you started writing NightWolf?
So she was inspired by Wolfsbane, because the Irish or the Scottish werewolf kind of thing. I always wanted her to have a bigger part. She was always more like a side character, this timid character that I felt that Marvel never really kind of used her well. So what I had her in a bigger role in my fan fiction. So that kind of became like, okay, well, I really liked what I did with this character. I want to see a strong female werewolf, and I loved the Scottish accent. That was like one of my favorite things. With Chris Claremont, like he used that a lot with the Scottish and the Irish, like when he was doing his writing. So that was something that I wanted to put in there too. So I had to have, so it ended up being more instead of like like a team up or a partnership. It was more like she became his mentor, and that's kind of where it ran from there.
Okay. Yeah, because it was interesting reading through SnowPaw, how you introduced her. Bit of sass. I really love the relationship in the family. I'm going to try not to give away anything for those who haven't read it. But, you really start her off as being very strong. And I can't wait for the third one to come out.
I didn't get to start the second one. I was reading volume 1 before I had my son interrupt me. And then I was like, oh, I'm just going to jump into NightWolf, and sure enough,
yeah, she comes across as being so strong and so confident in everything, even at the very beginning when this first happens to her. It's really kind of cool to see.
Yeah, and what I love about it too is that like it's kind of going against the grain of her time period.
Yes.
I think that was like that wild nature, because she's born, a werewolf, and the fact that she didn't know it, but she still had that kind of instincts. And back then, like you were able to have a little bit more of a, in general, being on a farm, you have a little bit more wild side than being like inside of a city. So they just, her hunting a deer and bringing it to the house, like that was like, oh, well, that's what she does, that's her. But like, it's not normal. It's not normal for girls of that time period. It's not normal for, girls period to throw a buck over their shoulder, so, but again, like their parents, the fact that like, it's kind of like the werewolf gene is a recessive gene, but it's still something that like is there. So like for them to see this kind of like, strength that she has, it's kind of like, okay, well, that's just this is her, it's kind of like watching Superman grow up in a way, that's Clark.
Yeah.
Well, it's not just the werewolf stuff. The thing that I love about it is like I said, when I first approached your booth at the Comic-Con, it's like I thought it was connected to Killer Instinct, to the character from Killer Instinct. I'm like, yeah, okay, finally. And then it's like I got to know about the character talking to you at the booth, and then Jessica finally caving in and finally buying the comic that I kept buying because it was me that eyed that one first. I'm like, this is pretty cool. I think I want this one. And then she's like, no, SnowPaw. And then all of a sudden it's like, now here we are. Fast forward a year later, but it's like, now that I've read it a little bit, it's like the fantasy elements, the vampires, the werewolves, the demons. And it's like, all of a sudden now I'm having character voices in my head as I read them. It's like, wow, I could, if they ever did voice acting for this, I could totally voice act this character. It's like just reading that, but it's like just engrossing in that world. It's fabulous that the art style, the phenomenal art style that's in these comics too, not just your storytelling, but the art style is just top of the line for any comic book I've seen. Because I used to work in a bookstore at Barnes & Noble, and I was looking at people buying comic books left and right again. I'm like, ooh, comics are finally coming back. They're finally back, because we had that whole, I don't know how to describe it or what to call it, but when DC Comics fell through, and it just like they were bottom flatlining for so long, and then they started picking back up, and Marvel Comics started picking back up because of the movies, and now it's like comic books are a thing again. I'm so grateful, and there's guys like you who actually do this, for a living, and with such a huge fan base. It's like a lot of people were speculating, like, well, he went back and wrote the SnowPaw comics and did the SnowPaw because everybody wanted to see SnowPaw have her own series to tell her backstory, and I'm like, I can see this expanding into a whole huge universe, like tabletop RPGs and things like that. I'm like, it's amazing how engrossed you get when you sit down and you read these.
Thank you. Yeah, I tried to so it took me so long to actually like get it out because I did a lot of world building. I mean, I even have stuff that's not even in the books yet that like I'm sitting on just waiting for it to like kind of come out naturally.
Mhm.
There's a lot of like I with the celestial beings, which I'm kind of hinting a little bit more in issue 7 of Nightwolf. Just kind of telling a little bit more about them, and then issue 3 of SnowPaw actually gets more involved with one that basically the way like my mythology is that the celestials are, you know, the three types, which would be like a angelic, demonic, and a mythological. So like these mythological creatures, you know, presented themselves as gods, but they're really not. They're just these celestial beings. um so like I have like their names, I have their abilities, their, you know, like their what races worship them, like, you know, dwarves and elves, you know, had specific, you know, uh celestials that they worship. So it's like I have this whole mythology built out, this whole world built out um ahead of time before I even started like really getting into the books, just because I wanted to have like that established, and I didn't want to like then be like, oh well, I'm going to make this up on the fly. You know, I wanted to make it like it was actually something that like could be, you know, a world that they could actually live in, and, you know, be related to in real life as well.
Mhm.
Well, that's kind of what it takes to be a fantasy author or a fantasy writer in general, too. Because when I worked at the bookstore, I heard this one lady was explaining to me how if you're a fantasy, like you write novels and stuff, a lot of the publisher houses now require you to lay out, like literally lay out a D&D table for them. Of here's the world, here's the characters, here's their stats, here's their abilities and everything. Here's what's coming, you know. And it just, when you get into that world, and correct me if I'm wrong, when you get into that world, though, the characters start taking over in a sense. Like you have an idea of what you want, but
Mhm.
then some of the characters start, as you get to know your own characters, they start taking on a life of their own, and they just start telling you their story as you get to know them and you get more deeper into the world.
Oh yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, there's more places where I would have liked to inject more of the mythology, but it's like if the story as it's going doesn't warrant that as much, or it feels forced, you kind of have to pull back on that.
Mhm.
You got to make it feel more natural, like somebody, you know, like for instance, you know, with like, you know, Snowpaw is telling Rodney about like their heritage, like that feels natural when they're sitting around a campfire, you know what I mean, or like just in general. But like if it's like just because I wanted to put it in there, you know, and say, oh well, like just a some kind of random comment, it doesn't make sense, you know.
Absolutely. No, I mean, it kind of goes back to for the way you introduce the whole world here in Nightwolf. We have it starting off in high school. That's something all of us can relate to.
Exactly, yeah.
Not only that, but if you think about it, look at the horror movies, look at all the different movies that's out there. Where are most of the places starting at? High school. Like you said, it's relatable.
Exactly, everybody's killing those teenagers.
All hero.
Or the pregnant lady that gets
I felt a
killed.
little bad about that one.
I wouldn't say she's dead yet.
No, he hasn't gotten that far, and I need to buy more of the series.
But
I got to the end, it's like, God dang it.
so let's just say that those 3 girls that go missing do make an appearance again at some point. There is a reason why I have that in there.
I like
Yeah.
that transformation of that one girl though. And yes, we're giving some spoilers. We said we wouldn't, but that one girl that she gets literally slaughtered and the demon shows up and he's like, you have a choice, take this one or that one. And she's like, you see her reaching out her hand, he's like, good, excellent choice. And you see her like almost like the Phoenix from X-Men, like literally burning up, becoming something new. And it's like, ooh, I can't wait to see what she's becoming. And then later on seeing Snowpaw with that bandana around, I'm like, I like it. It's like a hint of Ninja Turtle style in a sense, but it's werewolves. It's like ninja style. I like that. It's cool.
Yeah. So to show the audience who watches it later, this is that scene that he's talking about. And try not to give away anything else.
Of course.
That's okay, but you know what though? When you show some bits of the art, it's just like looking at it at a comic shop, right? When you flip through and you were like, "Oh, I like this," so hey, show it up. That's all.
Exactly. I'm giving the floor to you because you've read more of this.
No, so I guess, okay, so you said you had this kind of started off from childhood. How did it begin to kind of like grow into what it is now, and how did you I guess take it from being more of a hobby into being something that's an actual living?
Well, I still am trying to work on that actual living part. It's still a side hustle. To be honest, I have a full-time job to support my family. So it's really more like any spare time I have outside of work and family. This is what I'm doing. Which is why I had to hire artists to help, because there was no way I was doing it all by myself. But yeah, no, so it did that kind of like dictate a lot of like what my path in life was. So I'm a web and graphic designer, and I went to art school because of comics. I wanted to be in the comics. May not necessarily be drawing them, but I wanted to be able to like have an access to that somehow. So and I knew like they needed graphic designers to do logos, to do layouts, to do letters. Basically, are graphic designers. So that was kind of like my thinking when I started out as an animation major, thinking, okay, well, the animation will help me do the drawing, right? Well, that was too tedious, and I was just like, no, I'm not doing that. So then I switched majors to graphic design, and that's kind of like where I went from there. And it just kept going. And as when I first started writing the initial story of NightWolf, I think I was a sophomore in high school. So there was a lot of elements that like of what I would have liked to have seen myself be at that level, or at that age, like because I was one of the goofy comic book nerds. I played football, but I wasn't like the star. I just was typical lineman, because that's what I did. I had friends, but we weren't like the popular ones. I had a girlfriend, but she wasn't like the homecoming queen. So it's like kind of like, what can I put this kid on a pedestal just to knock him off? You know what I mean? Like that was kind of like where it was. I was like, all right, I'm gonna put him do that Batman thing where he's born with a silver spoon, top of his game, early on, and then like everything gets taken away from him, because it makes for a better, more interesting story. Like then how do you pick yourself up from that? What do you do? It kind of helps you down a path. You either go down one or the other. Um, so that's kind of like as I was kind of experiencing these things, that's kind of how it started. And then as I got older, the dialogue, the story evolved with me, and it matured as I matured. And then it got to the point where I had graduated college. I got married and had kids, and I had 12 issues at that point. And I'm like, all right, I should really do something with this, or just, you know what I mean? Like it was like put up or shut up at that point. So I started reaching out to artists to help me with it. And finally, I started working with Carlos Herrera, who is my amazing illustrator, and history ever since.
I was gonna say, I love how you said you put him up on a pedestal, because it's seeing them, okay, being crowned homecoming king and queen, and then having it be immediately afterwards. That's as far as I'm gonna go.
I mean, I already gave that away a little bit.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, it's that perfect seed then into everything else, where it just all spirals from there, from that one, really that one time when it suddenly interrupts into his life, instead of just building up around him. So I mean, it is a good read.
No, it reminded me of one of my favorite movie series, which that you've seen too, Underworld, the whole Underworld series, in a sense, because it's dark and gritty, but it starts out like cool and like modern cities types, but then it gets all dark and gritty all of a sudden when you see the nighttime stuff happening and all the shit that I'm not going to spoil anymore.
Yeah, so like the way so I've tried to establish this more so in SnowPaw, that like these creatures do exist, but humans are oblivious to them. As you can see with like some of the hidden characters that I've had splintered or throughout the book, humans are oblivious to them until like their eyes are actually open to them, and then they're aware of these creatures. So that's kind of like the same thing that happens with Rodney, but more of in a horror sense. And whereas like in like SnowPaw, it's got more of a fantasy spin to it. but it's all about like, you know, humans just don't see these things. We're oblivious to it until, like I said, your eyes are open, and then it's like now it's got that like, kind of like that John Constantine thing where you're like, oh my god, now there's ghosts and shit everywhere.
It's perfect with human nature anyways. We
Yeah.
are kind of oblivious to everything that's right in our face.
Exactly. That's what I mean. Like, you know, when you're looking for something and you can't find it, but yet like then like somebody else is like, oh, it's right there, and you're like,
Get a bit, yeah.
No, it's kind of like me. It's like growing up, I didn't believe in fairies existing. And then, you know, I started doing all the spiritual stuff, and a friend points out, and they're like, "There's one right there." I'm like, "Oh, I see it now. Okay, cool." You know, it's like I know exactly. I get what you're saying, because humans are taught not to see things, and it's just ingrained in our nature. So it's like in that world, it's like, oh my god, now it's starting to happen. But does that also come from a personal belief system of your own of being able to see these things, or is it just in the fantasy world?
um, it's hard to say because at a younger age, I remember, I don't know if they were dreams or real life, but I always had nightmares as a kid. So there was times where I would end up on the floor in my parents' room, and I had a dream, or it was real life. I don't know. Like it felt so real to me, but remembered seeing like I felt like it was either what people depict as the Grim Reaper, like walking through like the window, and then
Mhm.
like it just happened, like, and I'm hiding under these like I had the comforter from my parents' bed, and I'm hiding under this thing, and because I'm like, you know, I'm like,
Mhm.
it looks at me and then looks back and then just continues through the wall. Like, so I remember this very, very vividly, and it felt so real. So to me, I would say like I would think it was real, but I haven't seen something like that since. Um, Oddly enough, it was around when one of my great grandmas passed away. So again, it's one of those things where it's like, it hasn't happened since, but kids might have that kind of like a, sixth sense, more so, especially when you have an open mind and you're more believe, like I believed everything. I was a gullible shit. So it's hard to say. I would love to like that there be more to this world than there is. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, I probably in my adulthood, I think I have, probably less of that. Like, oh, well, I'm not going to see something because, like you said, you're trained not to, right? They make you think you're crazy if you do. But like, but in general, I would just like, I want to believe that there's more to this reality than just what we see day to day.
No, I think there has to be, and we just don't see it.
Well, there has to be, because it's coming from some of my experiences that I've experienced, and all the EVP stuff that you see on the internet, and all these guys that do the spirit hunting and the ghost hunting. It's like they have proof that they show with technology, and it's like, if there's an afterlife and there's spirits hanging around, what if there's another whole new world that we don't know that exists, that we can't see? You got like, you talk about like some of the spiritual people, like some of the shamans and stuff, they do their thing down in South America, Peru, all over the world, and they see this shit too. And it's like, what are we doing that we're not seeing it? What are they doing right? What are we doing wrong? What are we doing right? What are they doing wrong? It's like that. It all starts in here. And I always believe that this is a real world up here that we have in our heads, this whole world, because they say for something to really truly be a success, or to be a success in life, you have to first visualize it inside. So to see that world inside, to you, it's real, and it's becoming a thing, even if it exists only on the pages of a comic. But to you, in your head, it's in here. You can get inside of your head every day, and you can see the action happening, and you can see it in real time, whereas we're just seeing it panel by panel happening.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and that's kind of fun. Like, the funny that you say that, because I do write like a movie script that's been playing in my, like, it's like a movie reel going in my head, and I'm here, and before I put it down on paper or on the computer, like I'm seeing it played out like live action. So that's kind of like how I write it, because I can even hear like what like if I have like a voice or an actor like that I'm thinking, envision in my head, or the voice, like that's a lot of like how I write my dialogue is based on like, trying to keep it like with a different voice, like catered to like what I would think would sound like on the big screen.
Honestly, I think that's probably a better way to do it. At least me personally.
When I was in high school, I started writing this script myself, which is a vampire script, because all the vampires were starting to come out around that time, and like started the whole movement of Twilight and all the different vampire stuff that came out. And it's like, oh, I can do this too. And then all of a sudden Resident Evil was set to come out, but this was before the first Resident Evil game even existed. I'm sitting here writing a script. It's horror that's mixed with vampires and werewolves in this world. And I just kept going with it. And then all of a sudden it's like, nah, no one's gonna want to read this. And I stopped, and I'm like, just stopped dead in the tracks, and then left it on a cliffhanger. And I set it aside, and years later I'm like, I wish I had that script. I find it on a missing page. I'm like, oh God, this is good. Why am I missing chapters? Now, what happened? It's like, it's when you get that idea in your head and it just starts playing out, you just need to keep rolling with it. You can't just stop dead in your tracks. So like, what advice would you give to people? Like you said, you're still working outside of this to try to, get this really revved up. What advice would you give to people who say they read comics and they want to start in the comic book world, or they have a story they want to tell, but maybe they want to write a novel and a graphic novel go with it, or just have their own world in their heads that they want to get out of their heads and get on paper to share with other people? What advice would you give them?
I mean, the first step is to start. Get it out of your head and on the paper. That's the first step. Don't stop. Keep going with it until you have something. And as you're doing that, share it with others. And, really, I know a lot of people are afraid of like somebody stealing their stuff or whatever, but, in general, nobody's going to take something that they don't know of or never heard of. You know what I mean? Like, so that's something that not to be necessarily afraid of. But if you share it online, certain things, especially if you have character designs, or if you have like something like the share that's tangible and you can put it out there, that actually helps to save you as far as like copywriting stuff. But yeah, share it. Build your audience early. One thing that I wish I would have done way back when I started doing this was have an audience up front before I went to my first Kickstarter, which failed. My first Kickstarter in 2016 failed. I set my goal way too high, and I was going for issues 1 through 3, but I only had 5 pages done as far as like the artwork and lettering and everything. So, and like I had character designs and the cover. So I had enough to make a Kickstarter page. But I didn't have an audience. So Kickstarter is the venue. You are inviting the guests to the party, so if you don't have guests, you don't have a Kickstarter, really. So that's something that I learned the hard way, and it kind of set me back a year or two. And then I finally got back up on my feet, and I just raised freelance, funds from doing website jobs. And we got the book done, printed it, and I started going to Comic-Cons and building my audience from there.
Okay. Yeah, I know. I think you currently have a Kickstarter going, don't you?
I do, yes, for issue 7 of NightWolf.
Okay. Because I know that I had a pledge for the second edition of SnowPaw, and it seems like your audience is growing quite a bit then from where it was in 2016.
Oh yeah.
Where I'm trying to remember
that.
just how many, like the numbers I was seeing in some of these the places that you're pledging at, and different reward levels. You can tell that you are becoming an actual presence now.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
I mean,
that doesn't even begin to describe when you were at work earlier. I saw something, and hold on, cat. Evil cat.
We have a cat with an attitude.
Oh, that's all right. I have 3 dogs, a cat. I have a 5-year-old. I have two teenagers. I get it.
Yeah, we've got 5 cats and a little boy who's autistic. Between all of them, we're kept quite busy.
I'm sure.
Yeah, but yeah, we got one cat who's got an attitude problem with the little boy.
Oh no.
But no, I was seeing it. I was on one of the geek sites that I'm on, and they did an interview with you. Like I think it was last year, but I'm like, he's already on there. I was like, wow, okay. This is a start. This is a big start because it's growing into something. Because according to what the article said, I wish I could find the name of the company that did it. But according to the thing, they're like, well, Robert started doing this, but then all of a sudden his audience wanted to know more about SnowPaw, so he went back and did SnowPaw, and now this is becoming its own thing, and now we want to see more of this character become its own series. And I'm like, wow, this is the vision right there. It's maybe it won't hit like a million people out there like Marvel does and everything, but at least the audience is growing, and you get to 10,000, maybe 100,000, maybe 200,000, maybe 250,000. You still got success right there, right? You still got people wanting to see this become a reality, just like you.
Yeah, I mean, as long as they keep wanting it, I'll keep doing it.
Yeah, so I mean, for those who watch us later, Lone Wolf Comics on Kickstarter, absolutely fantastic work.
Yeah, if you're watching, it's lonewolfcomics.com/NightWolf. That'll take you right to the current Kickstarter.
Okay.
I'm looking at
We'll
it
make
right
sure we
now.
post that afterwards down there for those who want to follow you.
Thank you.
But switching a little bit here, where do you foresee this going in the next couple of years? Like,
I'm hoping that it continues to grow, and that I can continue to get it out faster. Right now, I want it to be to the point where it's not only is it self-sustaining, but it also can become my full job. That way I can focus more and do more and write more, put more books out. I have several titles that I want to also work in, but I kind of have to focus on the two now that I have going on, even though like the other titles kind of eventually tie into like a world ending event that they all have to deal with each other. But it's just and having the time to do it all. So like I said, in the next couple of years, I'd like to be able to get to the point where I can sustain my life with my family and keep these books going, and continue to grow, build my wolf pack, if you will, and just keep going, keep doing it, and I get to the point where this is all I do.
That's pretty much definitely, I would say the artist's dream is to be able to have it, be able to support you. Because I mean, it's always seemed like it's more of a labor of love, particularly at the beginning.
That is definitely an accurate statement.
And talking about comics, as I told Jess, I said I grew up into comics too, and I always wanted to collect them. My dad would buy me the old school Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle stuff, and all my comic collection got destroyed in a fire that I had. It was just like priceless artifacts gone. Like I can remember those old school wrestling comics they came out with in the 80s that I used to collect of the WWF wrestlers, which are now WWE. And it's that, I stopped doing it because I'm like, why? I don't want to risk having it get destroyed again. And then years later, fast forward years later, when the Avengers came out, the movie, they were doing extra shootings in Cleveland. And I went and I believe heavily in the law of attraction. So I wanted to attract this in my life. And I went out and I applied to be an extra in the movie.
Nice.
And I didn't think I was going to make it. And I made it. And being able to sit there, you're not supposed to talk to the actors, but I'm sitting there and here's the guy who plays Loki, looks at me, starts a conversation with me. And I'm like, well, I'm not supposed to talk to, okay, well, he's like, what? You're not supposed to talk to me. Go ahead, talk. So we're talking comics and we're geeking out and we're talking some of the Avengers stuff that's going on. It's like, man, I miss this world. What have I been doing? I've been too much in video games and in that fantasy world. It's like, okay, and I get to talk to Chris Evans and talking to those guys and just meeting some of those guys talking about their comics questions. Like, so I'm like, okay, I got to buy my first comic again, Avengers comic. And I bought Avengers versus X-Men and I just started collecting. Then Jessica came into the picture, met her, my dream partner. And
I would have to say that the SnowPaw and NightWolf are probably the first comics I've bought since I was a kid.
And then I also got her to buy Winchester Mystery House as well. And it's like, it's just going to go from there because she's geeking out. She's got her love for this. I've got a love for this now. And it's just like, one of the things that I love about your comics compared to some of the other comics I've seen is that the artwork is stellar for one. It's like, it is superb, and every comic and every issue, it's just spot on, amazing, and it attracted me to it. And like you can even see some of the cover art for those of you that's watching. Some of the cover art, and Jess has her SnowPaws right here, all the different alternate art covers and things like that that she
I went
got.
a little crazy for that Kickstarter, but I mean, it's like I said, it's really more of a labor of love here, because as you see, it's the imagination going, and as we said earlier, it's also seeing where the character takes you, and it's fascinating to see.
Not only that, but I want to mention that
that's
when I was looking at these, and I was looking at the way that your partner illustrates these and the way that you write these, it's like I haven't seen something like this since the 90s, like the comics of the 90s, because that's another reason why I stopped getting into comics and I left, was because they were getting to a point where the stories were getting way too much, or I've heard this before, or the art style was just just read the words. And I started getting into the habit of just reading the words and flipping through and not looking at the art style. But this makes me sit there and actually capture, I can't speed read this. I have to read every single thing and see the actual
because the art actually partly tells the story. Which when I'm writing my scripts, I'm very descriptive about what is in the panel, what it should be, the angles. So because I use it as part of telling the story, the dialogue is just there, for obviously for the creator's sake, but like there's a reason, there's a background, there's a reason something's happening in a lot of these panels. And I even go back and say, like, if an artist comes back and is like, oh yeah, they didn't fill out in the background for a reason, I'm like, no, you need to have this here, there's something there that needs to be there.
I'm friends with several artists that are actually really successful in the business, and they told me, they've all given me the same advice. They say, if you're writing a book, you're writing any kind of book, do yourself a favor and write it like a screenplay first. Don't just go sentence by sentence, chapter by chapter and tell the story. Write the screenplay, describe the background, so that way if somebody wants to turn it into another form of media, you've already got it right there for them. Say, here's my description of everything. Here it is. This is what I saw in my head before I wrote the entire paragraph format and everything. This is what I saw, box by box of action. And that's how they make movies too. They always have those storyboard sequences. First, they come down and they write like comic style storyboards of this guy's posing in this fight and this guy's posing in this fight. And he's going to swing this fight. And it's like they just do that, and it's all done on paper behind the scenes before it even gets to.
And I think that's why like comic movies have been performing so well, because they're like basically storyboards for a movie. They're a perfect match made in heaven. You know what I mean? Like you're skipping a step because it's already been done.
Absolutely.
A lot of these authors now too are actually starting to take their stuff now. A lot of the series are being rebooted, as I was telling Jess, as TV shows. Like they just recently announced Harry Potter, and now Twilight's going to be rebooted as a TV series. And a lot of authors want to do that now too. And it's like, I can see it. I can see why, because long-term storytelling, as opposed to just crunching everything down into a 2-hour movie.
Well, that's exactly it. I mean, and The Walking Dead trailblazed that, because like they didn't make that a movie. They didn't make that a series of movies. They made it a TV series that lasted for what, 10 plus seasons. And like, that's just it. Like it's the long form storytelling. You're able to get everything like, cause there's so much from those books, for a Harry Potter example, that they didn't put into the movies that they could have, but there would have been, it would have been like 12-hour movies,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's one of the fascinating things too, with the way that the chapters are going. I've only read the first 4 chapters of NightWolf. So I've got to get the others.
I have 2 here and 1 of SnowPaw, because I haven't got a chance to read the second SnowPaw issue yet.
But it's fascinating just how everything ties together, and it really is just one continuous story. You don't have to crunch in to try and fit it all into one comic book. It just is a continuation.
Yeah, I mean, and I tend to leave it at a bit of a cliffhanger too, so that like you're like, then I want to make sure that like once you get to that end point, you're like, okay, there's more coming. I want to know more, just because like And that's the same. That's a kind of a writing tool, for people to be like, okay, now I'm going to come back for more. Otherwise, if you,
I'm going the evil laugh over here because Jessica hates cliffhangers. I've always loved cliffhangers. I like get the evil mustache thing because I love reading those books that have those cliffhangers. Like comics, especially, it's like it makes me want to go buy the next issue. It makes me want to go buy the next book. It makes me want to keep going. It's like it's one of those things where at the end of each, if there's a cliffhanger at the end of each chapter, I might not want to go to bed for a few hours. I'm going to sit there.
And you mull it over, like, I need to know.
I threw a temper tantrum. I'm like,
she looks at me and she's like, I'm not spoiling it. Have you read it yet? I'm like, no, you've been having it all to yourself. I want it. And she's like, well, I'm not going to spoil anything, but she's like, is he writing the next issue yet?
Well, so issue 7 is on Kickstarter. So we got 5 and 6 there as well. So
want to catch up? You've got the bundles that allow you to.
Are you planning any?
I'm grateful for.
You planning any special hardback editions for 5, 6, and 7?
So
8 comes out.
When 8 comes out, after 8 comes out, there'll be another volume. So the way I do it is I collect every 4 issues, and for the NightWolf series, so I am planning on doing a so because like the hardcover, I'm going to do a second one and a third one for this 12 issue arc, and it's going to have SnowPaw and Black Claw underneath the die cut. So it's going to be the same kind of die cut, but with a different werewolf, and then like the same with like their human form then underneath that. And then I'm going to have like when that last one comes out, I'm going to get like a slip case so that they can all 3 sit in there together.
I love that. I told Justice that was one of the things you just mentioned was that, oh, here's the werewolf, and then when you turn the next page, there's this human form. Like, that's pretty cool. Like,
yeah, that was a nice start to the volume.
Like I said, being a graphic designer, I don't get to do the fun stuff at my regular job. So when I'm doing it for myself, I'm going to go all out.
Yeah. Then what would be the point otherwise?
Exactly. If I can't do it for myself, well, who can I do it for?
I know what it's like because as a graphic designer, we just hired somebody for our stuff who's doing our editing of our videos and everything. But she was showing us some of the stuff that she was doing. I'm like, holy crap, I wish I could draw this great. I wish I could design this kind of stuff myself. It's amazing because I've always been an artist myself too, but I've never had that gumption. Somebody tried to encourage me to have the gumption to just go get a booth and just sit there and sell some of your art. But it's like, I don't really feel comfortable and confident doing it because my art isn't really, it's my art, but it's not my art. It's that fan art of doing other people's characters. And it's like, I don't have any unique characters of my own to want to do. And I don't have any ideas up here. So I just keep drawing for the fun of it. And I remember though, it's like, I was shocked when we walked up to Giancarlo Esposito and I wanted to give him a picture of Baby Yoda that I drew, a wanted poster. And that was the first moment when somebody actually that's outside of my family and outside of my friends and my girlfriend encouraging me to do my art. And he looks at me, he's like, did you draw this? Did you draw this? They thought I was one of the artists out there in Artist Alley. I'm like, yeah, I drew this. I just decided to come over and give it to you. And he starts going into role play, he's like, wanted poster. He's like, Bounty, where's the child? I'm like, outside in the car. It's a green, no, it's a green or bluish. The license plate says child, and you'll see him in the back seat. He's sitting there. There's no Mando. Send your troops. He's like, so he gets in, he looks at his guy next to him. He's like, sees a guy walking around in stormtrooper outfit, but he's like, you come here. Child in vehicle. And then he looks at me, he's like, what do you want for this? He pulls out his wallet. He's like, how much do you want paid for this? I'm like, whoa.
Nada.
What? I just wanted to give this to you, because I just drew this out because I saw the vision in my head of something cool. And I gave it to him and he ended up giving me his autograph for free. I'm like, okay, so I need to do something with my art. I need to just do something with it at some point, probably in the future. Maybe I'll be out there doing something because I have ideas in my head too that I want to create, like worlds. That's why I mentioned earlier. It's like, what advice would you give somebody who's starting out? Because I'd love to see something come out of my head too.
First step, put it on paper.
You've heard me talking about the fantasy worlds I want to build. They're in my head. I can't write them because we're working on our other project right now. It's like, I want to write this world. This world is beautiful. I see it every day in my head. I'm literally, before I go to bed at night, it's like, when I sleep, I literally enter that world. And it's like, I love this world. This world is cool. I want to share it.
Yeah, I mean, it's trying to get past the point of being scared of sharing to eventually reaching the level like that you're at. And it's quite a journey from everything that I've heard. I'm not artistic in the least, at least not on paper.
You're selling not just your story, but nowadays you have to sell yourself too,
Yeah.
because you have to put yourself out there, do these kind of interviews, be at a table, talk to people at the tables. You're branding yourself as well as branding your book, and there's no way around it anymore.
True, particularly with social media.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Do you have any other questions?
None that I can think of. I'll probably think of a million afterwards.
That's usually how it goes. I'll admit that I raced home from work and then hopped over here immediately. So it's how it goes. But is there anything that you would like to share? Any kind of message that you would like to put out there for those who will see this?
I guess let me give the pitch, that for everybody who doesn't really know who I am, just based on what we've talked about. So I am Rob Multari. I'm the creator and writer of NightWolf and SnowPaw, as we've been discussing. I'm also the self-publisher through Lone Wolf Comics. NightWolf is a story about a young man who finds out that he's born a werewolf, gets thrown into a supernatural war against demons, witches, vampires, other werewolves. And SnowPaw is his mentor during his origin story. And then her origin story takes place in 19th century Scotland, where she is to be married off to a rich man's son. And that fairy tale life is not meant to be, as she finds out that she was born a werewolf as well.
And for any D&D people who are watching this, you all know, if you're a DM, what the world building is all about. This is the first comic that I've ever seen, a story in general, that is world building, that's in the comics realm, that just really captures attention from the first moment. Like, yeah, you got the idiot teenagers. Like, if you're an idiot teenager yourself, or if somebody calls you an idiot teenager and you're watching this, hey, you got a dream, go follow it. But don't be stupid. I like, the beginning, it's like you got those clingy girls jumping on the main character because, not spoiling, but you got those when he's already got a girlfriend, and it's like already life lessons of why are all the girls always attached to guys who have girlfriends? Why do they always go after them? It's like teenage life. You see it there, but it evolves into something so much more deeper. So if you're a D&D nerd, you have to check out Rob's comics, because Jessica, from the moment you saw him, I knew you were in love. I saw that look in your face. We started walking. I'm like, we got to go over here.
It wasn't an if, it was a when. But yeah, I mean, the world building, the detail that has gone into your comics is absolutely amazing.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
So I can't wait to see it go further.
And you definitely have fans for life over here.
And welcome to the Wolf Pack.
It's funny you say that. It's funny you say that, because another reason that I was attracted to this, because ask Jess, I love anything wolf related. Like my spirit animal has always been the wolf, and I've always felt like I myself was, almost like a werewolf of sorts, because it always comes out, when I need to defend my family or defend myself or defend my friends, and it's like it just comes out when my values stand strong. And it's like I love that, because our clan for so long in Call of Duty was the Wolf Pack, and now we've got Wolves of Light in Destiny too. It's always been the wolf. So this world of werewolves has been what we've needed, because I've not seen anybody else doing any new werewolf stuff lately. In the comics realm, especially, I haven't seen anything other than the horror writers, where it's all slaughter and kill and then kill the werewolves. It's like this.
Yeah,
is more
exactly. Yeah, you don't see anything,
Yeah.
And that's a big driving force why I did this book, because I wanted to see something like that. For me, like one of my first drawings that I did as NightWolf, I got it tattooed whenever I was 18. It was my graduation present to myself. So that's something that like when I first was in school, I was doodling when I was bored in math class.
Why is it always math class?
Numbers.
Mm. Nice to see the werewolves being the heroes rather than the villains.
Exactly.
You also have SnowPaw, where the female demographic out there that hasn't had like any new superheroes or any new heroes to relate to may be able to relate to that warrior spirit about her. Because that's one of the reasons why we ask you to come on the Warrior Roundtable too, is because you're making these characters literally warriors. You've literally created a female warrior raised and born in Scotland, and everybody knows that the Scottish people are some of the strongest people. The Irish, because I'm Irish, I'm from an Irish background, so my grandma taught me about the Irish versus the Scots and all that stuff for all the centuries and how they fought and how they fight for their own. And it's like seeing this embodied in SnowPaw. There's a character right there. Yeah, most females that's watching this, yeah, you can't turn into a werewolf, but you might be able to embody some of the qualities of that wolf, that inner wolf that you have inside of you. And so she could represent that for the female population because they needed a new hero. Am I right, Jess?
Absolutely. And SnowPaw is a really good character to emulate.
And for me, when I was writing her story, I wanted to make sure that like because my daughter being 5 and eventually she'll be getting into comics, I wanted like a character that like she could look up to. Like my wife loves Wonder Woman, but I wanted like something, something like my daughter could look up to, like a strong character like that as well. So that's kind of like I wanted to put her up as my like my Wonder Woman, if you will.
No, I'd say it's a definitely a good start because I mean, right from the get-go, from her own origin story, there's no holding her back.
It's not just that, but if you look at all the forums, like you read Reddit and stuff, a lot of the comic lovers and the comic nerds like myself are complaining about how they keep changing this character, this female character, they keep changing that one to try to reflect the new population. But we need more artists and we need more creators like you to come out with new characters that can relate to the newer population so that they don't have to keep changing the older characters to fit that. We need newer heroes to step into that new generation of what is like Jessica and I Jessica got into manga because of me, and she got into My Hero Academia, and we were just sitting there watching the episode today of the anime, and I about cried because here's a girl character who's speaking out, trying to protect the guy she loves.
It's near the end of the latest season, so yeah. It's like 6-7 seasons in.
I'm still saying though, it's like you got characters like that are stepping up, and the Japanese artists are doing. Where are writers like Rob here that needs to do this stuff? People out there, you're watching this later on, or you're watching this, through a clip. Go watch the full video if you see this as a clip, because you have a dream inside of you to write something. You have a dream inside of you with these characters. If you're living the fantasy world like me, or like Jess, or like Rob, or like anybody who's written really good stuff, and you got these fantasy worlds, don't just sit at the table and do your D&D session, play the worlds. Write the worlds, write the books, come up with your own thing and just build that dream. Because if you do, like you said, build an audience early on and just go from there as you're writing and building, they grow with you. Because those very first people that start following you, those are going to be your true warriors to carry that movement forward.
Very true. Very true.
Well, I'm glad that I had the pleasure of actually having this conversation, aren't you?
Yes. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you for having me.
So make sure you check out Rob, Lone Wolf Comics, Kickstarter, and what was the website one more time?
So you can go to lonewolfcomics.com/NightWolf. That'll redirect you to the Kickstarter. You could also follow me on the social media at Lone Wolf Comics, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. And if you want to follow me personally, at Rob Multari.
I know our next comic convention we're going to is going to be Motor City Comic Con in May. You going to be there?
I will be there. Actually, my wife and I will be there. We have a double setup like usual in Artist Alley.
And Novi again?
Yeah, Novi.
All right. So for those in Michigan, it's going to be in Novi.
I will be doing my cosplay of Star-Lord. You'll see me walking around in Star-Lord. I finally ordered the full outfit. And it's like, that's our first con. Then we got a few other cons, and we're just going to be hitting all the cons up for our workshops as well, because being dating coaches for geeks, gamers, and pop culture lovers and nerds like myself, we're trying to really drive home a movement. And that's why we got you here too, because we want to help drive your movement forward too. You know,
Thank you.
we love what you do.
Thank you. And us creators who are putting ourselves out there, we appreciate the help from you guys and from, you know, anyone who's doing what you're doing. We appreciate, you know, all the help and all the effort that you put into these videos and interviews and podcasts, you know. And thank you.
Well, thank you. I can't wait to see what you come up with next. So I'm lost my train of thought. Sorry.
But you have the floor. You got anything to say?
I normally let him do all the talking. But again, thank you very much for joining us tonight. We are gonna see you guys next time.
We're definitely going to have him back on
Yes.
here to talk about the future of this, because I want to, like I said, I want to see this grow. I'm not even the creator. I'm seeing ideas in my head of how this could grow. And I'm like, wow, this
If you got an idea, get it on paper, get it out there, and don't be afraid. You'll get some criticism, and hopefully you'll also get some constructive criticism.
You might get knocked down, but you know what? Don't stay down. Get back up.
you didn't
Yeah.
stop. You got the rejection letter from Marvel, and you're still here. You're still going.
And I had a failed Kickstarter, and that didn't stop me.
Heck no. So thank you. And I think that's it.
I guess that's it. So I'm Brian Eccles,
I'm Jessica Ferris.
and we are the
The
Dating
Dating
Warriors.
Warriors.
And we want to thank Rob Multari for being on here from Lone Wolf Comics. This has been a superb pleasure. I need to go back and finish my homework by reading the rest of it this week and catching up, because I have now, well, we're sharing the collection. You know that, right?
I don't know. Must I?
Okay, if he ever comes out with these statues of any of the characters, I'm buying them. And those are mine then.
You mean like one of these?
Told you.
Well, we're still working on it. Got to try and get the price points down.
Always a pain in the butt, I can guess.
I mean, you know, I would have had them out already but the quotes are way too high, and I don't want to charge anybody that much.
Oh, thank you.
This is why I love my Worgen from World of Warcraft. Werewolves.
Yep. The Worgans are fun.
Oh, yes.
But thank you. And until next time.
Until next time, my friend. Safe journeys, safe travels, and we'll see you at Motor City Comic Con, and we'll see anybody else who's at Motor City Comic Con. We will be there.
Absolutely. Wait to see what you come up with next.